For your awards consideration, Max presents the Emmy Award-nominated HBO original series True Detective Night Country. When the long winter night falls in Ennis, Alaska, the 8 men who operate the Salal Arctic Research Station vanish without a trace. To solve the case, detectives Liz Danvers, Jodie Foster, and Evangeline Navarro, Kaylee Reese, will have to confront the darkness they carry in themselves and dig into the haunted truths that lie buried under the eternal ice. Don't miss the series Rolling Stone calls thrilling and gripping, now streaming on Max.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. This is Sean McNulty of the Wake Up Newsletter here at the Ankler here in New York City on Friday, December 13th. I'm joined in Los Angeles by Elaine Lowe and Richard Rushfield, who somehow did not get a Golden Globe nomination this week. Richard, what happened? I had you as a lock for Best Supporting Journalist. What's going on?
You know, it's a popularity contest.
It really is. It really is. Did you get your invite to the show yet? I'm sure that's coming this year, right?
Yeah, I think they want me to present.
Yeah. I tune in for that. That's for sure.
I've done so much to bring attention.
You really
to
have.
The show and the company.
Can't argue with that. Elaine, who should we pair with Richard to come out to present? And who should present with Richard?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. Jay Penske.
Now there's your ratings gamble right there, Elaine. I love it. You are the TV business writer. You're like, go big ratings. Who can we get to make the biggest impression here? So
sweeps week type stuff, right?
Exactly, sweeps weeks. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, today here, Ankler contributor Lachlan Cartwright is going to join the pod in a little bit to dive into Hollywood's deep ties to the growing manosphere in stand-up comedy, which also happens to have strong ties to a certain very popular podcaster in Texas. We'll dive into that. But first, here over in the business of the business this week, the folks at WBD are starting to put their 2025 cards on the table, Richard. And the odds of this company looking the same in 12 months are about the same as you going to the Golden Globes this year, I think. A lot of change that are on the board, as you guys discussed last week. Elaine, certainly WBD was beating the Max as a global business drum pretty hard. A big presentation I was over there in London for, and you guys talked about with Minori. That was followed up early this week with an announcement from WBD about their big Comcast deal was renewed, Elaine. So unlike the Disney channels of late, who had some pretty big blackout issues on certain carriers, no blackouts for Discovery, the Turner Network, CNN, and so forth. That Comcast deal wasn't up for another year, but you know how Zaz likes to get things done before the holidays. He's got a lot of Knick games to go to at MSG before he has to start paying for tickets next fall. So, business is taken care of. By all accounts, WBD maintained its $3 a month subscriber fee from Comcast for TNT, despite not having the NBA as of about a year from now. Comcast can give the Max ad tier for free to streaming bundle subscribers if they want to. That does not cover the majority of Comcast TV video subscribers, mind you. So if you have a cable box at home for your Comcast, no free Max for you. Over in the UK, it also renewed the Sky deal that it has over there on the whole. So HBO and Max programming will continue to be on those networks for the foreseeable future. And Sky TV customers will get the free Max ad tier when it launches there in 2026. Sky also agreed to drop a little lawsuit it had with WBD about the Harry Potter series, so that's bygones be bygones. That's in the ancient history. But turning back to the Comcast deal here, Elaine, it's an accomplishment. I mean, a big question mark whether WBD was going to keep those, the rates they get especially for TNT after losing the NBA. So, then by all accounts, kind of kept their rates even. But this is also kind of like touting, hey, we were able to book the luxury suite on the Titanic for another week. Like, this doesn't solve the problem here.
Well, speaking of which, you want to look at the other news that came out of WBD about keeping your luxury suite on the Titanic. Look at what they're doing with their cable businesses. I mean, it's just been a big fortnight for let's see what we can do with our cable networks across town.
Yeah, just to keep this thing going, just, for some context here, Elaine, so, Comcast had 12.8 million video customers as of the end of Q3. Just for context, 2 years ago, that was 16.5 million. Like, where are we going to be? This is reportedly about a 3-year deal, Elaine. Where's this number going to be in 2026? So, this is not a long-term solve for WBD's problem. It's great that they got the deal done. And, we're able to, there's a big question they had going in. So, there was some accomplishment here, but by any means suggest this is a way out or a save for WBD here is not exactly, a deal is better than no deal, Elaine, but let's keep the context in mind here.
Right. I mean, this is kind of the fundamental issue when you talk about the cable business in general, right? I mean, it's like nothing about the core cable business has changed. over the last 5 years. None of its attendant troubles have changed, but it's still a business that throws off so much cash that what are you going to do, not catch it?
Yeah, exactly. And they just can't live without it, really, so there's no other option there. But yes, you alluded to the other news this week, Elaine. I guess we'll call this a bit of a corporate reorg here. Richard, WBD Corporate Comms wanted to workshop a new term with you. You open to give him some feedback? What do you think? You open for it?
Yeah, so I'm happy to help.
All right. We have a new term, enhancing strategic flexibility. That was the headline of their SEC document. What do you think?
That's exciting.
Exciting. All right.
Yeah, it sounds to me like strategic flexibility. Another word for sale is
Exactly.
is a way you might have said. We have the strategic flexibility to get rid of pieces of our. It's just like a new administration is coming, a new era, and everybody's getting the houses dressed up to
Right.
Cleaning out the closets so you can show off to potential buyers and everything, and getting this all ready to for the final phase here.
So yeah, some curious language here in this SEC document, Richard. WBD is now referred to as a, quote, parent company of two different operating divisions. So that was a interesting positioning. Those operating divisions being Global Linear Networks and Streaming and Studios is now grouped together. They're currently three different divisions on the balance sheet. So we'll see what that means next year when they do some financial reporting. But Richard, you know what parent companies can do? They can at least perceptually switch out members of their family.
They can sell their children to the coal mines.
I'm not sure this analogy works anymore, guys. This family analogy.
When I wrote this out, it was like, this is getting a little dark here, I think. Yeah.
The meaning of life, it's medical experiments for the lot of you.
Exactly. But that's what that flexibility is about, Richard. So if you're perceived as a parent company, we have several businesses, Richard. They come and go as we see fit here.
Is that a promotion for David Zaslav now that he's the head of the parent
that
company?
part wasn't exactly mentioned, but maybe I didn't read the fine print on that one. But it kind of harkens back to the Hollywood of yore, Richard, when like Gulf and Western and Transamerica, GE, we have many divisions. We are a parent company, and we make transactions and deals all the time with our businesses.
So when they get rid of cable, or cable gets rid of itself by ceasing to exist, that's going to be a big hit on the books. So any little baby steps you can take in that direction to kind of ease the pain as you get there, like to telegraph the pain is coming, to help you swallow that, I think are what they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think, Elaine, this is kind of what this is. This is not, and to be clear, this is not a Comcast Spinco situation. This is not a spinoff.
They are still part of the same company under WBD. It's interesting to see how Comcast decided to do it and WBD within weeks of each other here, right? I mean, Comcast essentially deciding to completely spin off almost all of its cable linear networks, basically, except for Bravo and a couple others, right, into a completely different company. But whereas with WBD, they're like, no, same parent company, but two very segmented, very separated divisions now.
Operating divisions, yes.
Operating divisions. But, I mean, you got to look at the street analysts here who are already, like, licking their chops, right, at the possibilities
Fresh
of saying,
chum in the water, yeah.
Yes, does this mean that we can combine CNN and CNBC?
What else can we do? Yes, right.
Look at all the combinations that are possible here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the difference between the structure here, from what I understand, Shauna, you can correct me, is that like WBD will still be at least able to use all of that cash from its linear networks to pay off debt, to delever, and presumably funnel some of that profit over to the streaming side of the business still, right? Like with Comcast, those are two completely separate businesses now. So, my question about the whole Comcast thing is, well, what happens with Peacock when it needs more capital investment?
Well, they had the broadband business to throw off cash there. Comcast has other, sources of cash where Warner Brothers Discovery.
Theme parks or whatever.
Theme parks as well, exactly, where Warner Brothers has none of those businesses to do that, to help grow their streaming service, where the cable networks at WBD are the thing that throws off over $2 billion of, profitability every quarter. And look, streaming was profitable for them, and they have, in certain quarters this year. So, it has gotten there, Lane, and they're projecting over $1 billion of profitability for the streaming business alone in 2025. So they see a horizon there for that, where they don't need that, or don't need that money as much per se to help out that streaming business, Elaine. And again, remember, the HBO linear business is included in that Max streaming business. So that money is probably, that's their free cash flow, big brother, if you will, that they have at the company. But it is, you're right, Elaine, it is, this different strategies are starting, Comcast, as we said, kind of fired the starting gun here. Certainly this summer, again, this global, linear networks division is the same one that wrote off $9 billion worth of value from it back just 4 months ago. So that was probably maybe the big gun that was fired was probably that, if you're going to put a starting point to this whole era, and then Comcast and WBD. But this does, Richard, leave and a lot of, all right, well, what's your plan? A lot of, Paramount's going to have a lot of questions to add. They have, they wrote off $6 billion this summer, but they still haven't done anything major from an organizational point of view. When Ellison gets in, which with the Trump administration will, could be within a few months in 2025. That's probably going to be question number one for them. So they're going to have their own answer. It may not be the same answer, but they have to have an answer now. And this was Warner Brothers in this case.
Yeah, I think everybody's getting in line for the final act here, and I'm sure that when we look back on this 3 years from now, a lot of these moves will make a lot of sense that they don't necessarily make at this time.
I hope so.
That there are maybe conversations going on or things happening that this is being positioned towards that aren't visible to us right at the moment.
That's an excellent point, Richard. Yeah, exactly. I will also note that another part of the language here, Richard, WBD also said it is looking to evolve the board. And I don't think that means spiritually. That's to, quote, drive future shareholder value creation. So if you want to maybe apply, Rich, get your resume, your CV ready there, Richard. I think there may be some seats open or something. I don't know.
A board seat, that's the job to get.
That really is, right?
What do you work like one afternoon a month, a quarter or something?
That is definitely a Richard Rushfield-friendly position, I think. Yeah.
Forget catered, very well catered meetings.
The best. Yeah.
I'm sure. So it's throw my hat in the ring there.
All right, fair enough.
Well, what I want to know is, do you remember, last summer when Bob Iger casually was like, an ABC and those networks may not be core to our company? And I think the reaction from the street and the reaction seemed quite a bit different then than it does now. And so I wonder if there's a renewed appetite for Disney to spin off its linear networks, or at least explore the sale of some of those.
Yeah, the thing to remember here is, each business is different. As much as they're all in cable lane, there are different realities. As you say, Comcast could spin them off. WBD doesn't really have that exact lever to pull. Disney, they don't have that many now, outside of, because FX is so entwined in Hulu. ESPN is obviously driving, the whole sports division over there.
It's so much more integrated.
Yeah, Disney Channel is pretty integrated into Disney Plus, so that really kind of leaves, like Disney XD, Freeform, which they totally could have put into SpinCo or figure something out. But that's not a major transaction, for Disney in that sense. So that's, much different than WBD or Comcast or Paramount, for that matter. So they all have different challenges, but. But Elaine, you just finished your TV market guide. How many times was a cable TV network mentioned in your conversations?
Oh, my goodness. It's such an afterthought for a lot of these agents.
What are these things anymore, right?
Yeah. When you're looking, you're basically looking at either your flagship broadcast network and then your flagship streamer, and that's basically it. And when I'm asking about these cable networks that fall under the same company, it's like, oh, yeah, well, they're kind of thinking about scripted, or, it's not really like our core to us, what we do in the prestige scripted area.
Right. Whatever excuse they can possibly think of. Even probably in unscripted. There's still some going on there, especially in the Discovery networks, but,
unscripted, sure, yeah, different beast.
But Richard, it's funny, I'm kind of looking ahead here. Just WBD, for example, it's like where the company is at now. And if you work, so you're working at WBD, streaming is now a profitable business on the whole. It's going to be significantly profitable next year. At least that's what they're promising. They now have carriage deals with all the major TV bundle providers. HBO is back up and firing on all cylinders. You guys touched on this last week. A huge slate ahead for 2025. Time to finally enjoy the stability that Time Warner was once famous for here. Maybe use those vacation days sooner than later. I don't know that this company is going to maintain this. It's just odd that the kind of dichotomy going on between appearances of the businesses and, the strikes are behind us as well, but there's still an immense change ahead here, Richard.
Yeah, you just get down to the bottom that the modern Time Warner, where it all began, is a cable TV driven business.
Right.
And that is the whole thing. And they have to become something else, either on their own or maybe more likely as part of a combination with somewhere else there. So, I think you said the numbers you threw out were the cable bundle makes $2 billion a quarter
in profitability
so that's $8 billion a year. So compared to what you're saying, $1 billion for streaming.
That's next year, and this,
So that's $7 billion between those two. So it's good that streaming is on the right path, but that's a huge goal. And somehow, at some point, the company's got to bite the bullets. All companies have to bite the bullets and just deal with this.
Yeah, or it's going to be bitten for them, Richard, where, cord cutting is real and it is going to, you can't stop any of those, of those trends.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the profitability numbers, Sean, you broke some of that down in the wake up, but it's like you're looking at the network side alone, right? Of revenue of over $5 billion, profitability of 2.1. But then you look at specifically at the direct to consumer segment, in Q3, it was 2.6 billion in revenue and only less than 300 million in profit. It was like 289 for that quarter. Yeah. That's an enormous gulf. Like you're talking about almost like 10x there, right? Like there's a huge distance to catch up on, but you're not going to just completely cut off your cash cow, even if it's slowly declining. So, what do you do about it?
Well, this was their first big one, I guess, still in to a degree, was to at least put out to Wall Street. I mean, again, the funny thing is this has gotten a lot of attention and I understand why, but the networks division is already its own division on the books. Like this isn't like a big deal.
Right. Nothing about the business actually
really
changes.
Here. Yeah.
It's sort of like an organizational thing. We're gonna put this in a different drawer for now. Right. And call it something and label it something else in the house.
Yeah. No, Richard's open house analogy was spot on.
Yeah, that's how it starts. You get a new stationery, a new thing, and look, you can if you buy this, it'll be no problem. It's has its own front door and its own phone number, and you can sever it in an afternoon if you want it.
Exactly. So more to come next year. Of course, Lionsgate is also definitely open for a deal next year. As I mentioned, Paramount, WBD, big changes. So never a dull moment here on the horizon in Hollywood in 2025. All right, elsewhere at the Ankler this week, Richard is trying to become an actor. Richard, where do your skills end? I don't know what's going on here.
The right part is out there for me. I'm
you're
sure,
one zoom away from a leading man role, Richard.
So I've been spending some time chatting with some actors about the acting profession this week. I did a little series, the final piece of which will run today, about the state of the profession. And I had one actress, her name is Anna La Madrid, who has a IMDb page, long as your arm. It's constant credits and books parts all the time. And she put it very plainly. She said, "This is not a profession you can work in anymore. That you cannot survive as a working actor anymore. Period."
Especially in LA, was also
That's it. That's it. Like there's not. Too few roles, too short, don't pay very much. And if you want to do it, that's great. If you can leap up into something bigger to become an actual name brand star, then that's a real thing. But in the meantime, you have to have another means of income because this isn't going to be it. Which is, we've talked about the disruption to the acting profession and all that and how it could come and what it'll look like and how would we survive if that happened? Well, it's happened.
We're here. Yeah.
It's done. It's over. So we will see whether Hollywood thinks ignoring these warning signs was a good idea 10 years from now.
Yeah. A great series of pieces there at theankler.com. And Richard, also very busy man this month, Richard. You have a great new series of podcast episodes you may see there in your Ankler podcast feed, looking at something called The 90s. Richard, enlighten the kids out there.
A new podcast, Hollywood Stories, where I talk to people and they tell their tales of specific little adventures in Hollywood. In the first one, we had the authors of The Last Action Hero telling their incredible odyssey, selling at age 22 this spec script that became a infamous Hollywood project. Coming up next week on Monday, I'm speaking with Winnie Holtzman, creator of My So-Called Life, about one of the great shows. If you put it on now, it holds up pretty incredibly. Most exciting in this conversation, for those who know the show, she reveals sort of what would have happened with Brian Krakow and Angela had the show continued.
All right.
Which has been a hotly debated, controversial. topic from it because the show ended on a cliffhanger with that.
Right.
And then she gets into creating Wicked and creating the stage play of Wicked and then adapting that to the screen, process which began all the way back in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
And reached its apotheosis this year in the Oscar race. So
it's a long business there, Richard. So look forward to that in your feeds here in the Ankler podcast next week. Elaine, you, My So-Called Life, that on your radar? We were in your reruns, I guess. You probably were too young when that was first on the air.
I watched it after my time, yes.
Yes, after your time. Okay. Always a classic. So, yeah, good to relive that. Over at the box office this weekend, what is probably Sony's last non-Spider-Man Sony movie in Kraven the Hunter, which kind of looks like it's answering the question, what if we made Madam Web but spent more money on it? Richard, you were a wanted man in town on the social circuit this week. You saw a couple of films as well. Do I get that right?
Yeah, I had back-to-back nights at the Dolby Theater for premieres.
Ooh, what'd you see?
Yeah, what do you got?
On Monday night, I saw Mufasa.
Okay,
Ooh.
all right.
And Tuesday night, A Complete Unknown.
Oh, you're two
Very
big
nice.
ones. All right. Well,
Yeah.
So, Richard, do you want to just say now how you're right about the Oscars again? Do you want to get that out right now, or what do you want to do? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I think we need to play the podcast from months ago when I said that that should be our official intro.
We'll bring it back at some point. Don't you worry about that, Richard. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everyone should be able to just like have that committed memory and.
It's more the Richard I told you so circuit.
Yeah, for the Richard I told you so
yeah.
circuit. Yes, exactly.
I want to make sure when it wins they're all they need to really say for their acceptance speech is Richard Rushfield, you saw it coming. So
right, that's all you're asking for.
There's really nothing else to be said then.
Just a little recognition.
Yeah.
All right. Well, all right. So what about Mufasa? What do you got there?
I went to Mufasa with my 10-year-old daughter, and I had kind of no expectations for what that would be. I sort of avoided the marketing material there. And all that. I thought it was a major movie. I thought it has a real reason for being. The photography of the fake nature and all that and fake animals is really incredible to look at.
But the real question is, how was the soundtrack?
So the songs are good. I don't know that there's a hit in there, a breakout hit, but they're more than functional. They're better. They're like B+. They're fun songs and they move it along really well. But I don't know that there's one that breaks out and becomes a hit on its own. But I just had a lot of really strong. I think Barry Jenkins had a real perspective on what the story he was telling was, and there's been some kind of dour buzz on it. Again, trade journalists are maybe not the people to turn to for.
Well, they were so dialed into Moana and the American public. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Nobody liked it except the audience.
Exactly.
But I think I'm breaking an embargo by even saying that I liked it. So, so I take that back. I'm just saying it was a big event. Read into it what you like.
All right, Elaine, is the movie on your kids' radar, or what do we? Is that gonna be at the Lowe household?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, my kids have the original Lion King soundtrack memorized, so we'll definitely be seeing Mufasa.
They've already gotten a request in for that one. Okay, fair enough.
I mean, for Lin-Manuel there. It's
those are big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
That might be the biggest animated soundtrack of all time.
Good question, but yeah, not my specialty, but
it's got to be like top 3 or something.
There, sure.
So
he was doing the late night talk show circuit, and as he noted, there are actually only like 5 songs on the Lion King soundtrack, and it's like no skips.
And they're
right?
all
like
hit.
they're
Hakuna
perfect.
Matata,
They're all perfect.
Yeah.
Circle of Life.
Can you feel the love tonight?
Yeah, all bangers all the time.
I can't wait to be king. It's like
it's a high bar. It's a high bar.
Elton John and Bernie Taupin at their
peak of their powers there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Richard. More importantly, how long is it? Elaine's got to know how long the kids are going to be out there for. Is it
90?
Is it 2.5 hours? What do we got?
It comes in. I'm guessing it was about just over 2.
Okay.
Hours?
But
I'm gonna look this up just to make sure we're not. Let me see how long.
That sounds long.
Yeah. No, it doesn't drag. Though.
It is 2. It's 2 hours.
Oh
2
my
hours.
goodness! It's an hour and 58 minutes.
Yeah, including credits. So that probably
all
is
right.
maybe.
All right. Well,
on
it's the Lion King. All right.
It's the Lion King. So all right, fair enough.
I gotta say the photography is really
what stood
spectacular.
out. Okay, so see it on the big screen, Richard. See it on the big screen.
The way this is all composed is pretty. You could turn off the volume and just look at it. It's pretty great. So.
All right, well you can check that one out. That's not out until theaters till next Friday, the 28th.
Yeah, and I didn't say whether I liked it a lot.
No, Richard has no
Embargo was not violated.
No influential statements here at all. No, not at all. And Sonic 3, of course, opens next Friday as well from Paramount. I'll, of course, break down all the numbers to know this weekend from, of course, Moana, Wicked, and Gladiator still kind of dominating the box office there. We'll see what Craven does, but that'll be in the Sunday night edition of the Wake Up newsletter there at theankler.com, or more likely in your inbox. And up next, Lachlan Cartwright is going to join me for a chat diving into all things in the growing manosphere of stand-up comedy with strong roots in Texas, but with agents in L.A. Funny how that works out. Lachlan breaks it all down for us, and just how much money is running through that circuit when I come back in a moment.
For your awards consideration, Max presents the Emmy Award-nominated HBO original series True Detective Night Country. When the long winter night falls in Ennis, Alaska, the 8 men who operate the Salal Arctic Research Station vanish without a trace. To solve the case, detectives Liz Danvers, Jodie Foster, and Evangeline Navarro, Kaylee Reese, will have to confront the darkness they carry in themselves and dig into the haunted truths that lie buried under the eternal ice. Don't miss the series Rolling Stone calls thrilling and gripping, now streaming on Max.
All right, I'm now joined by Ankler contributor Lachlan Cartwright. Lachlan, good to see you as always.
Great to be here, mate.
You had a good read this week at the Ankler looking at the world of, I guess we formerly call it canceled comedy. Maybe you used the term in your piece was the manosphere. How do we describe this world of comedy that you looked at this week at the
Look,
Ankler?
it's brash. It's unapologetic. It's comedians who are on the more conservative bent that appeal to Gen Z blokes. So we're talking the likes of Tony Hinchcliffe, Tom Segura, Andrew Schultz. There's a whole band that has been born out of the Rogan universe. And so I sort of did a deep dive into these guys and how they're raking in the cash thanks to this huge audience and a boom for them.
Yeah, so for the listeners, Tony Hinchcliffe, of course, got a lot of attention at the big Trump rally at Madison Square Garden before the election. Well, you can set this up here in terms of what happened after that.
He went on stage at the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. He was actually the first performer on stage, and he made a joke about Puerto Rico, saying it was an island full of garbage, which got a lot of people offside.
Yeah, joke was put in quotes by some people, but it was what it was.
He got a lot of people offside because of it. The Harris campaign was quick to go on the offensive, sort of pinpointing, Hinchcliffe as a racist and therefore, making the wider point that, Trump is a racist because, he had this person on at the start of his rally. And that moment went viral. It was international news for weeks, if you remember, right at the tail end of the campaign. Trump even made light of it by dressing up as a garbage man and was in a garbage truck, if you recall that. So it was a huge moment before the election. But Hinchcliffe's popularity only soared because of it. And he had already gone through one cancellation before because of some remarks he made about an Asian American comedian. And so Hinchcliffe himself took to the stage of The Mothership, which is Joe Rogan's comedy club in Austin, a couple of weeks after Trump's victory. And it was the first time he really spoke about what had happened.
Yeah, he kind of he would not disappeared for a little while, but laid low for a little bit after that.
Yeah, he laid low for a little bit. You can't really blame the bloke because there were sort of people calling for his lynching on social media. But, he went on stage in Austin in The Mothership in this clip this routine he posted to X called Garbage. And he sort of talked about what had happened. And he said, it's fucking wild. I was the news for 9.5 days during a fucking huge election, and sort of went into some detail about what had happened leading up to it, and actually said that there was a joke involving the C word that he struck out of his routine because he spoke to someone from the Trump campaign who said, well, you can't get up there and say the C word. Well, instead he got up there and compared Puerto Rico to a floating island of garbage. But he is one of several of these comedians who have launched themselves out of the Rogan universe and, really have created this ecosystem through social media where they're making big bucks on touring, on merch, and on a bunch of other appearance type stuff. And, one of the figures in terms of Hinchcliffe is he's earning sort of upwards of $10 million a year because of it.
Yeah. So yeah, this used to be kind of, the sitcom, movie deals. This is where comedians, that's how you made your money. The touring kind of got you to these points. It was a launching point. It wasn't the main destination. And it's really kind of become between touring, merch, and, comedy specials have really come back to the fore here of the comedy world, and the hubs, as you mentioned, his Joe Rogan's Club is in Austin, Texas, not in New York or LA, and you're finding audiences in different areas that maybe were not the gold mines of their previous ages, but now you can make real money. All these guys you're mentioning, Theo Von, I think, was making, what was the number?
15 to 20 million.
Right?
And Theo Von was the comedian who infamously had Trump on his podcast in the lead up to the election. Right. And they talk about cocaine. And so you've got this tier of comedians, and I write in the piece how, back in the day, mate, you used to go on the Tonight Show, and that would help launch your career, and that would get you the visibility, and then you'd be booking the clubs, and then you'd be getting the touring deals. Well, now you go on Joe Rogan's podcast, or even Tony Hinchcliffe has his own podcast, Kill Tony, which is incredibly successful, and then that launches you into the realm that you can then sell out venues.
Yeah, you don't need, late night TV is almost not an afterthought these days, Lachlan, but it's definitely not anywhere near the microphone or that it used to be for comedy in that sense. It has shifted a lot to this platform. But, what you mentioned, Tony went on Joe's podcast and he's, okay, then Tony becomes more popular and then Tony has his podcast and that becomes more, so it's kind of like, I'm not going to call it a Ponzi scheme is the wrong term, and I'm not going to use the right way, but there's definitely this kind of referral program that these comedians are building out a little bit, where then Tony will have people on his podcast, in his network, and they start to, maybe they need an agent, and the agencies are playing a larger role in this as you dive into as well.
Yes, and so at Endeavor, they have, a burgeoning comedy department. They repped Theo Von. Over at UTA, their head of comedy, who took on Tony Hinchcliffe after he was canceled the first time.
Right, by WME.
And Endeavor dumped him. And so UTA picked him up. And when it comes to Hinchcliffe, he actually really tries to entice the comedians on his show to sign with UTA and sort of makes the point. Right. So then you have this other ecosystem developing there.
Yeah. Follow the money a little bit in this ecosystem too, right? I mean, these are people who probably maybe don't have agents. They're maybe, again, comics in middle America or other areas, not in New York or LA. And this is a way for them to get prominence and get money. And the Hollywood agencies this is their way into this market.
Big time. And then they sell those specials to the likes of Netflix, which we've seen has made a huge play in comedy. Ted Sarandis is a massive comedy fan. And a few years ago, looked at comedy as an art form like music and really started shelling out big bucks for the likes of Chappelle and Chris Rock and these mega buck deals where a lot of money was coming into comedy specials.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll bring you into me with this groups together here. But, HBO was the home of this for many, many decades, right? And Ted really came for it in the 2010s and, got the Chris Rock was an HBO person before, and now he's a Netflix guy and so on and so forth. Outside of the Carson and late night TV part of it, HBO was a big part of it. And now we're seeing this year, Hulu's come for Netflix's throne, and they just launched this Hilarious, I think it's called, something along those lines, stunt. Jim Gaffigan just launched it in November. They have Bill Burr's next special, who was a Netflix guy. They have Sebastian Maniscalco's next special, who was a Netflix, previously on Netflix. So Hulu's gotten into this mix now, and this is only, of course, as you know, more buyers means more money out there for the agents to have. It's nice to have something to bid against, Lachlan, in this world, right?
Exactly. And Netflix, had the Netflix as a joke comedy festival,
right? They make festivals out of it, right?
And so there's a lot of money coming into this world, and so these comedians have a lot more opportunities really to make big bucks.
Yeah, exactly. And I will just note, even right now, we're recording here mid-December, Netflix, over a period of 4 weeks over the holidays, has 7 comedy specials in 4 weeks. And that's just Netflix. This is Jamie Foxx, Ronnie Chang, Nate Bargatze, the 2024 Roast with Jeff Ross, Michelle Buteau is doing a New Year's Eve special, Gabriel Iglesias, Ari Shaffir. That's literally just in, a 3 to 4 week period on Netflix. So this is a massive, massive genre for them still today. But if you look at the popularity, and I chart the numbers on this, Netflix releases their viewership numbers every week. And look, Amy Schumer's on there. You have Fortune Femster, a lot of, bigger names on there. The viewership, Lachlan, really goes to the people that you're talking about here, outside of The Rock and Chappelle, who are probably the number 1 and 2, on Netflix. Shane Gillis is the next person on that list. And Tom Segura is not that far behind him. And they're massively, you're talking, 10 million views ahead of Amy Schumer. Like and even Matt Rife has a new name as well, who's kind of adjacent to this perhaps, but this is where the viewership's coming from.
And that's why these guys are uncancelable, because, they have these huge followings, so it doesn't really matter. Someone on social media can launch some kind of a campaign against them, but, they have an incredible, loyal, dedicated following that will come out to the clubs, that will watch those specials. Yep. And that brand of humor is the brand that they trade off, which means they're always looking to push the envelope, and they'll do whatever it is to get a laugh, because they know that there's going to be no real consequences to that. I mean, look at Tony Hinchcliffe, for example. He's had 2 major scandals that would really wipe out anyone.
In 3 or 4 years, right?
This is booming for Tony Hinchcliffe.
He said $10 million a year, right? He's making $10 million a year. There's a guy who you would think before would have to go away in shame and never be heard from again.
Yeah, they would have to go into the wilderness and make his apologies and maybe repent and have some kind of a comeback article in the New York Times. That doesn't matter anymore.
It's a different era. It's a different era. Yeah. It just brings me back. I'm just thinking right now, it's almost, I grew up on, Andrew Dice Clay was kind of in this model of someone, and he built his business by selling comedy records. That was, there was no, that was how he did it back in, let's say the 90s when I was growing up. But he kind of has that, that say pushing the boundaries, that kind of, uncancelable element. And now in the creator economy, this has only grown because you just don't need the things that comedians needed, to make money and make the big bucks before. It's just the game has changed, Lachlan, that's for sure. And the agencies are at the heart of this right
that's
now.
Correct. And, so many comedians come from a liberal bent, and that is their brand of humor. So there's been this huge opening for the guys, and they're mostly our guys, to profiteer from the more conservative brand of comedy. And some of it's around trans people and trans issues. But they're happy to keep pushing the boundaries, knowing that there's no real consequences besides selling more tickets and getting more profits.
Yeah, I will even note even on late night TV, Gutfield on Fox News often gets large audiences, in that late night. He's not often talked about with, the Kimmels and Colbert's, but he's built an audience on Fox News as well over time with his show as well. So anyway, Lachlan, a great read. As always, you can check that out over at theankler.com, where you can, of course, sign up for all the pieces we have here at The Ankler. Just pop in the old email address. You can follow The Ankler on the socials at The Ankler. Lachlan, thanks for joining. Good to see you as always. And we'll see all of you next time on the podcast.
Cheers, mate.